I'm at Jack White's house in Detroit. There's over a dozen of us there. Jack's 88-year-old mom is in the front room greeting everyone as they come in. His older brother's there too. So are some folks from the Third Man record label Jack runs. Malcolm Gladwell and I are sitting in amazement. The Raconteurs, Patrick Keeler, Jack Lawrence, Benson, Jack White, are hanging on Jack's sunporch, warming up, playing the blues. Of the 30 or so #1 Billboard albums this year, only 4 have been rock albums, and one was the Raconteurs' Help a Stranger. Jack and Malcolm first met in Nashville to talk about Elvis for Malcolm's other podcast, Revisionist History. Malcolm got the grand tour of Jack's estate in Tennessee, where he and most of the band live now full-time. After that, Malcolm would jump at any chance to hang with Jack. So when the invite came to tape a Broken Record episode with the band in their native Detroit, we leapt at it. Even Rick Rubin phoned in for it. You'll hear him turn up a few minutes into the conversation. This is a fun one.
Why is it such a hard thing to interject modern technology into the lyrics of rock and roll or blues songs? Because hip hop and country can do it, and
and they're expected to. It's
sort of
almost like
expected to. You're like in modern countries. I mean, I don't know if we could look some up or something, because I'm not that familiar with modern country lyrics. But when I'm listening to the radio in Nashville, it's always like something like, "She went to Starbucks, got herself a latte, and then she drove her new Ford F-150 Lariat all the way to the bank, buddy," and all that shit. And like,
We got that on tape.
yeah, I hope so, because that's a hit.
That's a hit.
We laugh, but that actually, you know what I mean? Like, why are they? And then hip hop, you can drop any modern reference and you're expected to. It's supposed to whatever's hip this week, and let alone not 2019. So,
Yeah.
But when rock and roll, if you do it, it's kind of goofy. I mean, it brings up the idea. Like I was sending you the idea of this phonograph lyrics.
Hello.
Oh, Rick.
Oh, hey, Rick.
Hello. How are you?
We're all good. We're sitting here with the Raconteurs.
Hey, Rick.
Hey, what's happening?
We were asking the question, why is it you can do modern references in country songs but not in rock and roll songs? That was the question on the table.
I think you can, no? I would love to hear Jack singing about the Tesla X.
But there's something about rock and roll and blues. To me, I always feel like if you can't, there has to be a mechanical thing to have it have romance to it. Like if it doesn't have, everybody's still singing about trains. Even guys who never even seen a train in their life can write a song and put a train in there.
Yeah.
But if you say monorail, people mover, or whatever, and that doesn't make any sense. It's not romantic. We're talking about electric car instead of an old Cadillac, all of a sudden it's not romantic.
But then ultimately you limit the rock and roll vocabulary to that.
I don't think that's right. I
agree with you, Rick.
I think that's a self-imposed limitation that maybe that's what it's going to take. Maybe that's what the reinvention of rock and roll sounds like. It's modern references. I don't know.
I think rock and roll has this, like lyrically, it's always been mysterious, I think. Almost like even the blues, they were like speaking like, such slang. I mean, it was like, you couldn't easily understand what they're talking about. And it's continued on. Like, what's Mick Jagger mean by that?
But if Robert Johnson when he's saying, "Beatrice, I love your phonograph," or whatever, he's talking, that was a modern thing right then and there. That was a hot thing to have. Not only rich people had record players in a lot of places.
But maybe it meant even more than that. Maybe it was like, in that day, a way of saying, I don't know, like, secretly I'm in love with you, or I don't know. Maybe it meant even more. Like it was.
Oh, the metaphor is heavy. I'm talking about just the literal reference of, he's referencing a modern technological device, a phonograph at that time. If you wrote a blues song, quote unquote, right now, and you mention an iPod or listening to a streaming service on your iPhone, that's not romantic. It's kind of sounds silly. And maybe it's something to contextualize with rock and roll's place in culture now in 2019 compared to hip hop or country music or modern country music, which I don't really think even is country music really anymore. But the fact that they're expected to make really current modern references in country music for it to be a hit song, it's an expectation. But those guys, Hank Williams wouldn't have been caught dead not singing about a Cadillac or something, like that.
Is this a problem for that kind? You're talking about sort of the rock and roll vernacular has a set of very specific reference. Is that a problem that you can't kind of update it easily?
You did put clicking and swiping into a rock and
Yeah.
roll. That's a very modern reference.
It can't be done.
Wait, what was the clicking, swiping reference?
We had a song on there where it said, Brendan
Don't Bother Me.
Brendan actually came out with the lyrics, Don't Bother Me. It's and I thought that was funny because it had like multiple meanings.
It's not pointing to a specific
Right.
Cultural artifact. It's you're playing with words. You're winking.
Yeah.
I did a Blind Willie McTell song a few years ago called Three Women, and when I did it was I got three women, red, blonde, and brunette, and when I went to the five, I said, it took a digital photograph to pick which one I like. And I got away with it there.
Yeah.
That was a blues song done in sort of like a funky way, and I said digital photograph, and I was purposely trying to break this idea in my head.
But that let's go back to, you made that comment just now, Jack, that and a lot of what passes for country today, you said, isn't really country.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the distinction. You seem to say that there are some rules that apply to country that don't.
You could talk specifically. I think someone who's a country artist might be able to tell you better than I would, but I think they'd also be afraid to say it because I think they live in fear in that world because they only have one radio format. It's country. And if they don't stick to the formula, they will not get radio airplay. If they try to do, like if a modern country artist, without naming any names or whatever, were to do like a record an album as the same way Hank Williams or Loretta Lynn had done in the 60s or 50s, then they would call it roots rock or Americana.
And it would never get played.
And it would never get played on the radio, and it would become, okay, he's trying to go rootsy now. And it would be a failure, I think. And I think that scares them. They have to use really computerized ways of making music.
They're adapting really quickly. They're evolving, I mean, the country music itself is changing. I mean, has been changing for so long now, and finally it's become anything goes. It's pop, it's rap, it's whatever, heavy metal.
Yeah,
so I mean, maybe it's kind of evolving for that out of necessity because they only have this corner of the market or whatever, So, and in order to survive, I mean, for country music.
Well, that's why Taylor Swift got so much more gigantic, because she distanced away from country and became more pop, and succeeded in doing so, which is, you're talking about the most loyal fan base in all the genres is country music fans. I mean, if they like you for one day, they like you to the day they die. And the worst are where we came from, the garage rock hipsters who like you this week and don't like you next week.
Yeah. And that idea of that you toggle back and forth between Nashville and Detroit is really interesting. I'm just curious about how that affects the way you make music.
I think one thing that happens is, there's a lot. Yeah, I've met a lot more fiddle players, like since I've been living there, or steel players, and invariably you invite one of them you just get to know these people. They're cool, so you invite them down to play, and soon they're appearing on your record, and then people are saying, "Oh, I see how you've taken on this kind of Nashville sound or whatever." And it's like, well, actually, this person. I mean, yes, I guess maybe you could say that, but in reality, it was just this guy's so cool, and I'm in awe of his skills. I love his. He's crazy good, and I want to be around that,
To add to that, though, if you went, nobody wants to be boxed in any case. So if you were, say, we did all move to Nashville and we actually became country singers because of the environment, we would probably be prone to not admit it. We would probably be prone when asked to say, "Oh no, that's has nothing to do with us. We liked country music back when we lived in Detroit. We're not being pushed around or influenced by our environment or whatever." But I think wherever you go, it's not like when we were in Detroit, it's not like we like the Stooges because we were walking down the street. We like the Stooges. It's because the people we're hanging out with like the Stooges, and we like them too. And not just being a cultural thing in this area of the country. We're more prone to like the Gories, the Stooges, Detroit Cobras, whatever. And if you're down in Nashville, you're more prone to like Loretta Lynn and Tammy Wynette.
Would you say that since moving to Nashville, forgetting the making of music, has your taste changed at all?
That's a great question, Rick. I'm gonna say
I've been exposed more to country, kind of pop country, by my wife, and she's like that stuff. And so I think I've come around slightly to some of it. Just I can see some good in it. I'm not sure it's changed my taste, but maybe it's broadened my horizons a little bit.
Have you written?
I have an appreciation. So I have a very large appreciation and respect for some of those writers. I think they're super clever, and I mean, and that's sort of been country music for a long time, kind of witty and clever, and that could be like Florida Georgia Line that has a line maybe that's just like, ooh, that's good. I appreciate that kind of stuff.
My appreciation goes to, like, I like the cleverness of the Monster Mash and the cleverness of the novelty songs. And if you when you're a songwriter and you're thinking of something clever, like I think this last Raconteurs album, we stayed away from clever in a lot of ways. It's tempting to want to come up with a clever lyric, but then you also can go past that line into novelty.
Well, then into no emotion, no feeling. Because it's that clever is kind of like it's a knee slapper, or it's like a, geez, I mean, not. It's actually, I take that back. I mean, sometimes it's just so good. It's and I can't think of any great examples right now. Like,
is there a song on this most recent record?
She Thinks I Still Love Her, or something like that. That song. She Thinks I Still Care.
Yeah, She Thinks I Still Care. George Jones.
I mean, it's the whole song is kind of just this witty.
It's a witty thing, but it's
ironic
so heavy.
It's so heavy.
So heavy. Yeah. It's almost like, and Loretta Lynn does that all the time. Like there's a throwaway novelty hook to get you involved, but the metaphors once you get in there are so heavy and deep. That
kind of makes you giggle for a second, kind of smile, but then you're like, ooh, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I think She Thinks I Still Care is one of the most amazing metaphors ever written. Yeah. As from a songwriting standpoint.
And everyone can relate to that. Like,
but you could laugh.
Forget her. Forget him. Like, I don't need him.
Yeah.
It's just classic, man. And then summed up so perfectly in that song.
But it's because he does still care.
Right.
That's the whole point of that song.
I remember there's a Conway Twitty song that begins with all the things he has to do now that his woman has left him.
Yeah.
Remember, I've canceled my subscription to the Home Ladies Journal. And then it's like totally gimmicky. And then you start to realize, oh my God.
This guy's truly sad,
He's
man.
truly,
What's interesting about it is it's really sarcasm.
Yeah.
And it's not unusual to hear sarcasm, let's say in a Bob Dylan song, but lines might be sarcastic. It would the premise of the song is almost never. I can't think of an example where the premise of the song is based on sarcasm.
Right, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. It's hook lines to hook you in with sarcasm, but the deeper meaning of it is actually. But I go so far as to say that that's all great songs are like that. That the story is what you're trying to convey. You're communicating a story. The music, the melody. All of it's a trick. It's all of a way to trick you into the story.
Yeah. Well, hopefully there are many levels too, right? There's to trick you in, to get you.
The beat is a trick. The title of the song is a trick. The melody is a trick. And I don't mean that in an insulting way. There's nothing wrong with that. That's great. And I think that's when.
But it's to manipulate your feelings and your emotions and to make you sad, make you cry. Like this way, ooh, this feels, this is great. Or this, you make some sort of sound that sounds, whatever, the D chord, the ultimate.
Do you do it? Would you say you do that consciously?
I do sometimes. I think so. Yeah, and probably fail most of those times. I'm conscious of it, and then other times, songs kind of creep up on me much later, and I think, wow, man, that's cool. That's really deep. It moves me in a different way. Maybe it hits me differently, and I think, I think that was a successful song.
Is there a song on the latest album that strikes you in retrospect as a Nashville song? A song you would only have written because you moved to Nashville?
Probably, maybe Thoughts and Prayers.
Thoughts and Prayers was the last song on the record. Kind of has that vibe to it.
It's really more. It's more Southern rock than it is country.
I think you're right, Rick. Yeah. It has that feeling to it. It's sort of like those incorporations of those sort of like that kind of
cowboy.
Yeah, cowboy, guitar slanger.
It makes me think more of like Leonard Skinner and Molly Hatchet than it does country music.
Yeah.
So, like on paper, if you were going to write a story about a garage rock band from Detroit that moved to Nashville who has songwriting sensibilities, you might say that they're going to turn into fucking Leonard Skinner. I don't know.
All roads lead
you
to
are
Leonard
Southern
Skinner.
rock.
Not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, not a bad. Wait, can you talk a little bit about how that song came about?
It was like a little demo I did that I thought maybe wasn't really that interesting, but Brendan kind of heard something in it, and we were testing it out. It was more minor key, I think, wasn't it, Brendan? Like I was doing like. All minor. I was doing a demo, I thought, and then you changed it to major D and brought some sort of brightness too.
What was I thinking?
So
is that all you began with, or did you read?
Yeah, and I had that was like I was trying to write lyrics like I wouldn't normally write. I trying to like pretend I was a different songwriter writing those lyrics. I would never write why does the Grim Reaper creep? How does the Grim Reaper creep if he doesn't really have the time? I mean, that to me, when I wrote that down was to trying to be ridiculous to myself. Like what another songwriter would write. I'm like, why? No, cross that out. I was trying to go into that territory to try to shake myself up a little bit. And I had heard
Did you pick?
What's that?
Did you pick a character for that songwriter, or was it just not you? Was it rooted in either anyone you love or a combination or a fictional character?
It was a character, actually. I won't say the name, but I heard a reference on the radio driving in the car. I heard a reference in the radio that pissed me off so much. It was a reference in a song that was someone trying to be clever and modern, and I won't say what it was, but to me, that made me write this line of, I wrote a letter down to you like I'm Sullivan Ballou. I was trying to say, like, if I had took this goofy songwriter and said, hey, listen, why don't you, instead of that reference, why don't you reference something that actually has some staying power, some longevity to it? Instead of saying that person's name, why don't you say Sullivan Ballou and let people go and learn about Sullivan Ballou and the letter he wrote in the Civil War, and maybe that. So it was almost like I was pretending to workshop with this songwriter kid who doesn't know what he's doing. It was kind of a strange, crazy, off the cuff, left field thing to do. But
so you're literally driving down the road. Had you heard that song before?
No.
So you're hearing it for the first time, and then the song makes a reference. And you're like, oh, yeah, you can do better than that.
I think you should care enough. I think a lot of people don't say that. I'm dumb enough to say that in interviews and stuff. Like to say like that's enough. I can hear that and it pisses me off. But I think that you should care enough about your craft. If you're an architect and you drive down the street and you see some ridiculously built, constructed house in a neighborhood where it doesn't belong, you have two rules of thought. You can be like, oh, hey, how easy going, man? Everything's cool. Sure, man, whatever you want. Or you can be like, no, ridiculous. Absolutely. Frank Lloyd Wright used to call all the glass building architects the glass box boys, which I always thought would be a great name for a band.
That is a good name.
But
it's great.
But out of his love of the craft, when you're turned angry at times by your love of the craft, when you see someone getting away with something ridiculous, I think it should anger you a little bit because it makes you love what you're doing all that much more.
I love the idea that you could be inspired by something that you don't like.
Yeah.
To make something better and new that you wouldn't do otherwise. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I think I always just feel like I learn more from what not to do than what to do. And there's these moments where I think I just popped in my head talking about modern country. Like when the Grammys were on last year, like Brandi Carlile, when she sang, I was like, oh my God, that's how it's done. That should be country music right now. Mm-hmm. That should be what all country music writing should strive for, is what she just did on Live on the Air.
What was it specifically about what she was doing that you were drawn to?
I believed her.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was like undeniably beautiful. You don't have to be country, a country fan or a fan of hers even to know that was gorgeous.
But
her voice is otherworldly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
But you gotta want to know. You gotta want to. There's artists out there. You hear them sing, and they could do a beautiful job and sing gorgeously. But I don't believe them. If I don't believe them and I don't trust them, then I don't care about their songs.
How do you? I mean, is that something that you worry about with your own music?
Yeah,
being believable.
Well, the dream would be, it would just be great to just be put out, because all the people that we love, well, I can speak for everyone in the band, but I can assume, but that the people that we love and admire and idolize, the songwriters and the musicians throughout history, are the ones we don't know much about. I don't really know that much about Hank Williams. I don't know that much about Robert Johnson. We grasp at little crumbs to learn about them, but I'm glad we kind of don't have that many photographs of Charlie Patton and Robert Johnson, because I think we'd probably destroy the mythology, and you wouldn't just be in love with that stuff as much. And nowadays you see everything of everybody's life all day long, and there's no mystery at all. So in order to be a believable character, like say Brandi Carlile, I do trust her and I believe in her. I still don't know that much about her, but from first impression, I trust her.
Isn't it interesting that the better the singer, the harder it is to trust them? Do you get do you feel that experience at all?
Oh yeah, they can fool you, can't they? They can trick you.
Yeah. Or you could have like, say, Nashville will have a studio session with a bunch of musicians, and there'll be a couple of like virtuosos there who are maybe like school taught or union or whatever kind of things like that. And after a minute, you kind of get that vibe like, too good, too clean, too nice,
not enough kind of
not enough soul.
You know, not enough,
But I'm interested in this notion of imperfection being somehow appealing and perfection being seeming phony. Is there a really good imperfect song? A Raconteurs song
a good imperfect song
that you love because of its how rough it is, or how imperfect it is, or how
kind of,
they're all a little bit like that in various forms, you know.
I think I not to say where you were but I think I bring that to that's what I bring to the table for you. That's what makes what the songwriting you do in your own world, where you are. He's a song craftsman, and I'm not really that. I'm not good at that. He's very good at crafting the song perfectly, and my talents lie more in being very rough.
Far from perfectly.
And I think that's where the matchup is cool. If we are both rough guys or both craftsmen, I don't think it would work. So I think it's two different looks.
Does that cause problems sometimes?
No, because I want it. I mean, I think that I can benefit from more of that in my writing. Like, you know, I've always thought that.
And I benefit from your craftsmanship and wanting to do. I think it's because we both want to do what each other's doing, attack the song in that way.
Striving to write the perfect song, you know.
Can you illustrate what you're talking about with a snippet of a song?
Carolina Drama is good because that's more like I would never have done that kind of songwriting song in the White Stripes, for example, like that kind of storytelling songwriting song with that kind of arrangement that we did. It would have been turned into more like a slide blues song, I think, if I had done it in the White Stripes, I think.
Give me a little taste of that, and then like
do a few minutes of. I think we should tune up though, because
that's what I meant to say earlier.
Let me give you this. Let me tune it real quick, and then I'll get it to you.
I was so out of tune. I wanted to talk to you guys about maybe
redoing that.
I just thought that was the kind of imperfection that made for great music.
Well, okay, no. This is me and him. Yeah, this is me and him. I wouldn't have said that, but he would. And neither one are bad.
Yeah,
neither one are bad.
And now I'm leaving.
And now the drummer quit. Right.
It's me. I bet it's out of tune. But that's kind of true. Well, okay, another not an example of between Jack and myself, but myself and someone else who shall remain nameless, a producer, and I was playing guitar in the control room with the producer there, and it was kind of a really exciting part of the song, almost like a Who part. You know, I was way up here, and I was, playing like on an electric guitar, and that's pretty damn well in tune. But the guitar, I was usually, on the 12th fret or whatever, it's really hard to keep it in tune. In fact, that's probably why Pete Townsend liked to play those chords, because they're exciting, because they're dissonant, and, But he had me tune the chord up on the 12th fret. Rick, are you listening?
Yes, I am.
He had me tune that fretted chord. So then later, I don't know why I'm screaming, later, when the record was being mixed by Dave Sardi, whose name can be mentioned here, he said, I said, "What's going on with this song, man? It doesn't have any power to it." And he said, "Your guitars everything's in tune. And if you want, I can put a guitar on it that's slightly out of tune."
Yeah.
And he did. And the song just came to life.
That's just sad.
So, it is. I mean, it is.
That makes me sad.
It made me very sad, and I didn't have a very fun time making that record, needless to say.
Well, this you can transfer this over to our talk about modern country. When we did the second Raconteurs album at Blackbird Studio, which is the big studio in Nashville, most of the big country records were being recorded there, especially at the time. And they were explaining to us how they were doing the songs in the next studio over. Like, we were recording a drum track and a bass guitar, and the band would play live together, and then we would start building on it. Like, okay, let's do vocals. The live track was the song. That was it. It was done. And they were saying, at this point, we were just be getting the kick drum ready in this country album we're working on. They would do a drum beat. They would play a drum beat, put it up on Pro Tools, put it on a grid, so that every kick and snare is perfectly in time, and then they switch out the kick and snare for samples of the snare drum that they think is a good sounding snare drum sample. So every snare drum sounds basically exactly the same, hit at exactly perfect time. There's no soul left in the recording at all. And that's how you get played on country music radio. You have to do that stuff to the song, take all the life out of it. And it's sort of like, man, can you imagine if even the Beatles had been recorded that way?
And even hip hop, those guys, those Beats guys are going so far to make the beats imperfect, to make them nowadays, to make them like swing and do weird things.
I think that's Jay Dilla.
They're not even in time sometimes. It's awesome,
Yeah, but that's Jay Dilla, who's maybe one of the first to do that, where they're really just kind of playing it off time and making it have some swing to it. You know what I mean? I mean,
they're trying to go the other way with it. Like they want this drum machine to sound like imperfect.
Imperfect, and it's better.
Well, what's driving that? Is it being driven from the audience level, or is it just a kind of thoughtless extension of expertise that because I can make it perfect, I will?
In my opinion, it'd be a bad domino effect of what's selling, what's working, and that one worked because we used this algorithm type thing, and we put everything up on a grid and made everything exactly.
Might be OCD too, man. People OCD in the business, honestly, thinking like, the engineer, like, oh, I can't stand the bleed, or I can't stand this snare's just kind of out of phase a little bit. I want to replace it, and no one says anything. No one says no, stop. No one says.
I would also describe it as a misuse of technology.
Yeah. I agree, Rick, and it's like you can use nothing can be firm. If I say I've gotten punished a lot for being like this anti-technology guy, I'm really not. And the point being is I think people misunderstand. I'm not saying like if you record on computer you're a lifeless piece of shit. It's like no, you can record on Pro Tools and do some really beautiful things, and you can use it properly. But if you plug in and everything, no one's playing in a room live together. Everything is tracked individually. Everything has 16 plugins and emulations on it of reverb with digital emulators, and on and on and on. You've clicked your mouse 3 million times before this song is quote unquote finished. Are you kidding me? There's no way that's going to have any solar life to it. And if you took your favorite recordings of Otis Redding or the Beatles or whatever and tried to do it in that same fashion, I don't think people would like the results. But that doesn't mean that you can't use that technology and come up with beautiful things. You definitely can, but you gotta be very diligent, I think. And what Rick said, you can misuse any of that technology. It's a lot easier to misuse this technology now than it was when it was just tape machines. It was a lot harder to mess up.
Absolutely, because you have more control, which can be a dangerous thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no undo. There's no Apple Z. There was no.
There was no
Apple Z. So you
had to commit.
It was really us working together. I mean, when this song probably would have been more of like a open slide, very trashy kind of song if I had done it in my other band, the White Stripes at the time. But when we did it together, it sort of turned into a storytelling kind of song.
You're grateful for that. In other words, you don't...
Yes, because I didn't want the Raconteurs to sound anything like the White Stripes.
Yeah.
If we were going to start a new band, I didn't want to sound anything like it. And then when I do a solo record, I don't want it to sound anything like the Raconteurs. And so anytime you do a project, you don't want it to have any real similarities. And I think maybe that's a little bit what's tough for anybody who's been in a band that connected with people in the mainstream, especially. I always think about that. Like we toured with Robert Plant in South America, and I just love what he was doing solo. And you just get that vibe in the room that people just want to hear that Led Zeppelin song next. Mm-hmm. And it's a little bit that's the kind of curse of bands too. People love bands as a unit. It's like I don't know. It's like maybe even part of a fantasy thing. Like, oh, I wish I was on the road with my 4 friends or something, in a van or something. I don't know. Maybe there's some appeal of that, but there's this idea that this gang of guys or girls is up there against all odds, traveling the country and coming up with these songs together. And when you're solo, it's almost like this is like an image. Why don't you just do the White Stripes? Why don't you just do that? That's what we want you to do. Why doesn't Robert Plant just reform Led Zeppelin? Because that's what you want you to do. But I think people don't realize that's not what the artist. The artists don't want to keep repeating themselves. Can you imagine if Robert De Niro had to keep playing Travis Bickle from Taxi Driver in every film for the rest of his life?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Bands should have term limits. That should be like a law passed. You can't be in a band for more than 5 years. Yeah. 5 years actually be pretty good.
Yeah, that's not bad.
But this reminds me of the last time we chatted for that podcast episode on Elvis. You were talking about how the first time you went to Memphis, it reminded you of Detroit. Yeah. And then you had that whole thing about how Detroit is a southern town.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not a stretch that you end up writing Southern Gothic why Detroit, bunch of guys in Detroit end up writing Southern Gothic rock.
Yeah, there's something about it. There's something there where there is a kind of literal connection. It does. When you're in Memphis, I feel very much like it's like Detroit. So New Orleans, Memphis, Detroit sort of have some straight down the country, some kind of blood vein going on. Yes, so you're painting the picture. We just played that song. It sounds very Southern, and we wrote it on a Southern front porch in my house in Nashville. Well, why aren't we writing a Stooges sounding heavy rock number? Maybe because we have acoustic guitars and we're sitting on a veranda or something. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
But it's
rocking chairs.
But it might be that sometimes these environments, you know that your environment influences. You don't really know specifically what it is, but you know it's being influenced, I guess.
That song was written from beginning to end on your front porch in Nashville?
Basically, yeah, for the most part.
How does it, when you guys write together, how does it work?
Well, it's been different. Like, so this record, I think we did a lot of impromptu on the microphone, like just going out there and just kind of riffing, just vocalizing, I don't know, on a song, and then picking out parts like, oh, that sounds nice or whatever.
I'm specifically remembering now, Caroline Drum, when we sat there and wrote it. It was sort of like, say we started off with Billy woke up in the back of his truck, and I was like, Billy, that's a stupid name to put in there. I'm like, well, we'll find something else later, and I remember actually Bob Dylan had come by the house a few months later after we'd recorded, and I played him that song, and I was actually saying, hey man, do you think this? I should come up with a different name. You've used Billy in a song. Tom Petty has, and 15 other songs off the top of my head. Billy Joe McAllister, Jumped Off the Tallahatchie Bridge. I was like, I'm trying to think of something different, but I can't think of a 2-syllable name. And he's like, I don't see a problem with that.
This song's been validated by Bob Dylan.
So okay, then I was like, okay, good, then we're fine. Let's move on.
Wait, Bob Dylan just drops by, and you've become friends with Dylan?
We are. He's my dad. He's my mentor. Yeah. So I don't want to insult it by saying we're friends, in the same as if I'm anywhere near. But we do have a pretty nice relationship. It's nice to be able to play something like that and get feedback. But to talk about the Brendan and I like songwriting in that song, for example, I say like, oh, that one thing was the name, and okay, we'll think of something later. But then he's like, he will say, well, what's he gonna do now? Okay, well, he just woke up in his truck and he went and saw, oh, there's a priest in his house. Now we're feeding off each other. What's the priest doing? Oh, well, maybe he's fighting with someone else. There's a boyfriend there. Let's describe his boyfriend. How do you describe these people and sum up their whole lives in one sentence? And I thought something like, oh, he's got some blue tattoos that were given to him when he was young. Like maybe he's been in prison since he was a kid, was the one way of saying he's had a rough life. It's hard to do that, though. It's hard to sum up someone's life in a soundbite. But you kind of have to do that as a songwriter. You have to come with you have to make these concessions, especially if you're talking about characters like that. But I think those things come out of me and him bouncing it off of each other. If I had been sitting there by myself, the song would have come out totally different and the characters would have done different things.
How often are the songs that you write about a fictional character?
Brendan is different, and he can tell you a different story about his own, but I almost never try to write about myself because it's just too boring for me. I feel it's boring, and also I'm going to end up probably writing about something negative or sad, and I don't want to keep reliving that for the rest of my life every time I play this song live. It just seems like... And then also, I think it's too overdone nowadays. I think everyone sort of expects that the new Taylor Swift song is going to be about her dating John Mayer or something like that. And I think maybe it'd be better if people wrote about something different. I read in the book something very interesting. It was like if you had asked kids in high school 100 years ago to write a song who knew nothing about writing music, that 90% of them or 95% of them would have written about the Titanic or a mining disaster or something big that was to the community. But if you asked 100 high school kids right now to write a song who knew nothing about music or songwriting, they would all 100% write songs about themselves. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I don't really have an opinion on about what that means, about how culture has changed. But I'm sure everybody listening to that statement could probably infer lots of narcissism and things that have to do with how we attack technology with social media now these days, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas before, 100 years ago, when most people hadn't even been more than 5 miles from their own home, they would assume that there was this grandiose life outside of their small town that they know very little about that seems very exotic. But that's all at our fingertips now.
I want to dwell on this for a moment because it's super interesting. This idea of this switch from 100 years ago, the kids would have written narratives about some world event, and today it would be about themselves. Because I was just thinking, as you were saying that, was there 100 years ago, after Katrina, there would have been a top 10 song, or the equivalent, or its equivalent, about Katrina, or about, we would all know, someone would have memorialized 9/11, or I was thinking, all these, that wave of police shootings over the,
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
there's that Janelle Monáe song, but the idea that, hip hop could be another version of hip hop would be a genre full of social protest.
Yeah. I tried to work with Jay-Z on a hip hop version of Stagger Lee, which I thought, I was telling Jay, and I wish you could have helped me with this, Rick, and make this actually come alive, but it never worked. It never happened. But I was trying to say, Jay, this is a song about a guy who was killed over a $5 hat. And these are mythical folk heroes that should be mythical hip hop heroes. Where are the mythical hip hop characters? There's a lot of people in hip hop who talk about themselves. Most of it is the MC talking from his own point of view. Nothing wrong with that. But wouldn't it be awesome if there was also mythical hip hop characters? And I thought, God, Stagger Lee it's just waiting to be done in a hip hop style. It's got everything. It's got everything that's talked about in modern hip hop. And say all you got to do is modernize it. Take us full circle to modernizing all things. But and he was interested in it for a second. We just never got come together and finish it. I ended up doing on my band, the Dead Weathers album, I ended up doing a version called $3 Hat off of it because I didn't want to see the music go to waste.
I'm curious about you guys to talk a little bit more about you talked about the music that you grew up with. I'm curious about the music that at the specific point you are in your career that really affects you and moves you.
Well, I mean, I like to pick up on little moments. You're like, ooh, that was like, say I heard this Billie Eilish song the other day. I don't know the name of the type, but I think it's when we go to sleep, when we all fall asleep, where do we go? I think. And what I liked was the way she recorded the vocals. And to me, that was some great use of technology. However she recorded her vocals, I'm assuming it's a Pro Tools thing, that it was like, oh man, beautiful. The way that it sounds like a synthesizer, but it's also sort of like four of her singing layered together. Very, very cool. Very well done. Impressive. And you remember those kind of things, like the tone of something. And that's what bums you out. It's like when everything is electronic or electric that you don't know. People used to say, wow, how did they make the sound? How did the Beatles make that sound at that one part in the song? Are they playing, I think that's backwards guitar or whatever it was at that time, some technique that, or say like in a movie, like how did they force that horse carriage off a cliff? Did they really kill those horses in that movie? But now it's just a one sentence thing. It was done on the computer.
Hey, Jack, how do you feel about the Donna Summer song, I Feel Love?
I love it. And as I read more about it, and I think, Brian Eno brought it into the studio and said to Bowie that this is the future of music. And there was the first song was all completely electronic, right, Rick?
Yes.
And again, to speak to what you said before, Rick, a good use of technology versus bad use of technology. Usually when something's the first its time has ever done, first time they built a Fender Telecaster or a Fender reverb amp, like the first out of the gate is usually the best. And that was one of those first out of the gate moments, like, oh wow, look what you could do with electronic music or craft work and all the things that came throughout that scenario of there's some amazing things can be done. And then, but that's the same thing with anything, say like a grunge movement comes out, all this dirty kind of raw sounding rock and roll comes out, and then you got to listen to 7 years of the imitators kind of watering it down. No big deal. That's how music's always gone. It's always gone up in hills and valleys like that.
There should be, how the Germans have words for everything. There should be a German word for the person who comes after the originator and does a bad version of the thing you once thought was great.
I bet
It's a great idea.
There's no German word for that.
Yeah.
Brendan, could you talk a little bit about, and I'd love if you played a little bit of it, the song I Don't Feel Like Trying Sometimes, or some
days I don't feel like trying. Yeah. Some days.
It seems like the most personal song on the album.
Yeah, it is. I didn't think much of it when I was writing. I mean, I didn't think that it was necessarily so personal. I mean, I think there's kind of, let me just be clear. I think I don't I don't write strictly autobiographically. I mean, I think I tell stories as well. They're not stories with, necessarily. There are lots of different characters, and the characters maybe morph into other characters, and I take liberties and artistic license, and so that being said, I mean, yeah, I think I kind of felt, I was just kind of feeling having a bad day, maybe more than just a bad day, and I started to write this song, and then of course, it's good to embellish and make things just twist the knife even more, and so I feel like I just take liberties in songs, like maybe try to make it more shocking or more sad or more this or that, and then people are asking me about it, it's wow, it's really sounds almost suicidal.
If you really wanted to throw it, when you're in a band like this where there's two singers and two songwriters, you can really throw a spanner in the works, and you'd have me sing it if it's that personal,
right?
And then see what happens there.
Right.
That could be an interesting twist. Maybe we should have done that.
Yeah, and we've always talked about doing that. We just never got around to doing that. Just singing each other's songs,
Mm-hmm.
Have either of you written a song before where it's two distinct parts like that, where it's almost like the second half of the song answers the first half and the whole feeling of the song changes? Are there any others like that in either of your catalogs?
Wow.
I think I do that a lot. It's kind of a little go-to of mine, like a big outro, big
But he means that was an answer.
Well,
to
an
the
answer,
first part.
yeah.
I don't remember hearing that before. Maybe
not directly like an answer thing, but I do like a good outro.
It's interesting that it's like the first half of the song is the I don't care and I'm wallowing, and then the second half of the song is but, and it's the second half is we shall overcome. And it's interesting to have both of those in the same song.
It is. It might be the only time that you or I have ever done that.
Did you start by thinking you were going to have the answer, or did you write the first half and think it needs an answer?
That was written. The second half was written on the spot, spontaneously, which
you thought it was getting too sad.
I thought it was getting too bummed out. Like we were all recording it. It also wasn't coming very easily for us all, so I was getting nervous that maybe people were losing interest in this song that I had such high hopes for, and blah, blah, blah. So I think that just after a take that didn't go so well, I think I said, well, I'm here right now, I'm not dead yet. That just came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I'm dead yet. And then they started playing along, not dead yet, here right now, and I'm not. By the end, we're singing, here right now, and I'm not dead yet. So we were like, whoa, let's, we got to use that. That's great.
Yeah.
And I was glad because it's a happy ending,
But these are things that would not happen. I don't think.
Way.
If you were
I wouldn't have
by
written
yourself
that.
Recording your own solo stuff. Those things wouldn't happen.
No, or if I had written it would become a part that would be,
It's funny how this is going to seem like a totally trite observation, but I've always been fascinated by it. You can have a song like that, the bulk of which is this dense downer, and then you stick the little thing on the end, and all of that is forgotten.
Yeah, exactly.
At the end, I was clapping. I was
right.
I was like,
You're cheering this guy on.
Like,
yeah,
it's almost like it just
Good
gets
for you.
It gets erased. The emotional arc of music is so fascinating that you can kind of rescue. You can take someone to the brink, and then you can
it's melody.
bring them right
it's
back.
That. It's with that melody. You can do that. I mean, I can do that right now. Just bummed it out, right? But it's gonna be all right. So there's that's the most basic trick ever, but it's all in there. It's great. I mean, Mozart knew it, they all knew it, how to just pull the heartstrings. And
it was like just kind of just popped in my head was that speaking of like novelty songs and with deeper metaphors hidden back there and changing things around. I was thinking of Loretta Lynn's song called Fifth City. If you know this song, it's the chorus is I don't know the chords exactly, but the chorus is And if you don't want to go to Fifth City, you better detour around my town, 'cause I'll grab you by the hair of the head and I'll lift you off of the ground. Just like a novelty thing, like, oh, okay, I'm gonna kick your ass if you mess around with a man. But then she says like this double chorus, which is, she's so brilliant at. She goes, I ain't saying my baby's a saint because he ain't, and that he won't cat around with a kitty. But I'm here to tell you, gal, you better watch your face or something. You stay away from my man if you don't want to go to Fifth City. So it's like she admits, yeah, I know he's screwing around and I should be mad at him, but yeah, I'm going to talk about that right now. We're talking about you. Right?
That's great.
That's brilliant songwriting.
Yeah, so good.
I'm curious about, all of you have lived through a period where the way in which people experience music your audience experiences music has changed fundamentally.
Mm-hmm. Spanning quite like...
In 20 years, we've gone from buying the album and listening to it from beginning to end, to I'm assuming it's almost all streaming and individual
streaming and vinyl.
How has that affected? Has it affected you? Has it affected the way audiences react to your music when you play live?
We thought, say, like when the Patrick and Jack were in the Greenhorns, I was in the Waist Stripes, and the Detroit garage rock scene was cooking, that we thought we had this problem of what they call golden age thinking, that everything was always better in the past. Oh God, the bands in the 60s, they had it so good. And it's like, wow, wouldn't it be great to be from that time period than this lame ass 80s and 90s, blah, 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 digital crap that we had to grow up in. And then it's like, we thought that was bad? Jesus, man, there's nobody's sitting down writing a song anymore, with a piano. And then like when you see something like a Brandy Carlisle on the Grammys, like, oh, thank God,
And you know what it is you see finally is talent. I mean, I think you finally see somebody who's truly gifted, and you're like blown to pieces, because what we're used to is mediocrity. I mean, just whatever's sort of viral and popular on the internet, which is always just so lame, nothing to do with skill or creation or art or
you want to say, like, I want someone to sit down and love their craft and love their work and their art form, and they're expressing it in a way where they can figure out how to blow your mind with the tools that they're using. It doesn't matter if they're analog or digital or not. Can they blow their mind? Billie Eilish, the way she recorded her vocals on that song I heard the other, she blew my mind. The way she recorded her vocals, she used the technology to her advantage and did something beautiful.
And she's trying to blow your mind.
Yeah, but there's not enough of that, it feels like. Maybe when you look back and say, oh God, it seems like every time someone turned their head in the 60s, someone was writing some amazing song that had greatness to it and would last forever. Maybe, though, that we're only remembering the good stuff. I don't know.
We're definitely remembering the good stuff, and the bar to get in the game in the 60s was much higher.
Yeah.
Because the cost it took to make a record, to get signed, you had to really be good just to get signed.
Yeah, and if you got signed,
really
you had to have your act together. By the time you got to the studio, like, guys, we got one chance. We better rehearse the shit and have it done right. And if you're going to sing from the heart, and you're going to try to really impress someone, because there's only this one moment. You don't have, we can go back and overdub and fix it and click and click, whatever.
The Beatles recorded their first album in 9 hours. That was it.
Yeah. Led Zeppelin first album, 36 hours. Black Sabbath's first album, 24 hours. Stooges first, on and on and on and on. All those.
Yeah. The other side of it is that because the entry bar is low now, yes, there may be more noise and more not good stuff, but you might hear something that you might not have heard that wouldn't have made the bar on a technical level, but it's a different kind of talent. Like when I hear someone like Young Thug, it's really exciting to me. Mm-hmm. In the old days, someone who you couldn't understand what they were saying, or maybe they don't even know what they're saying, might not get to record.
That sounds like Young Thug in you evokes an idea that you trust him and you believe him, right?
Yes.
Well, that's what I'm speaking 100%. Of is when you believe somebody, whatever tricks they're using to make you think that they're believable and should be trusted, or if they actually are trustable, whatever it is, you trust Young Thug, and now you're ready to open the door and listen to anything else he has to say. If someone comes out of the gate and I don't trust them, I kind of almost X them out. And I'm never going to really dig what they're doing, no matter what they do, no matter how beautiful it is. It's coming from somebody I don't trust. So
okay, on the trust front, we mentioned earlier that people who are technically great are harder to trust because there's so much craft in it, it's harder to believe them. Who are the people who you think of as technically great, yet you still trust them?
That's a great question. Let me think for 2 seconds.
Beyond Brandi Carlile, because she's an example.
Yeah.
I think Paul McCartney, maybe. I think he's famously the more technical one guy.
My favorite Beatle.
But what's that?
My favorite Beatle, no doubt. Paul McCartney.
But I believe him with all my heart. I mean, and a lot of times I think I'm just interested in the way that an artist evolves, even when they're older, and how they get sort of lame. It's still kind of like Paul McCartney. Like, I still want to hear what he's up to, what he's doing. Yeah.
I might include Simon and Garfunkel, even though Garfunkel is the voice you think of more in Simon and Garfunkel. The more recognizable voice is Garfunkel's. Paul's harmony is incredible, and Paul's songs are incredible. But when I listen to those records, I believe those words. Like I go with them.
Yeah.
There was almost these anomalies like that kind of started off like acts that didn't really know what they wanted to do. They knew they loved music, but they didn't know what exactly their voice was, and they found their voice. Like I think Dylan, if folk music hadn't been happening, and same thing with Simon and Garfunkel, both those acts, if folk music hadn't been the hot thing at that moment, they could have easily, if they'd been 10 years before, they would have been rock and rollers like Little Richard and Gene Vincent. I mean, matter of fact, what they were called, Simon and Garfunkel were called Tom and Jerry when they first came out. And they became, because of the folk movement, they became believable and down-to-earth and soulful folk singers that you believed what they were saying, and that they had knowledge. They were experts about something that you didn't know about. You had that trust in the person who's communicating to you through music. You trust them, and you believe that they know something that you don't know.
And by that, the sign of that trust is, for Simon and Garfunkel, is by kind of the middle of his career, Simon puts out an album called Graceland, in which he takes you to South Africa and writes about essentially people from New York City. I mean, it's the most hilarious, brilliant, left-hand turn.
I listened to that record.
The whole thing works.
Yeah, it totally works. It's probably one of the greatest albums ever made, really, Graceland. And I listened to it a few months ago and realized, oh my God, there's also a Zydeco song on here. There's Los Lobos is playing on here. Oh yeah. It's not just African music. It's like all kinds of music going on in that record. I'm like, wow, I didn't even remember that being part of that record. I thought it was all just Lady Smith, Black Mambazo, and that. But there's really a lot going on, and there's a lot of New York going on in there. And on top of it, you named the album Graceland.
That's
Who
the
the
best
fuck
part.
would do that?
That's the best part.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
There's a girl from New York City who calls herself the Human Trampoline. That's the one from Graceland. It's like
I had a like an ignorant, naive revelation in that the Mississippi Delta was shining like a national guitar. I've been singing that line walking around the house for 30 years or whatever. And it was like about 2-3 years ago, like, oh shit, a national guitar. That's a name brand of a silver dobro, which is shiny. I thought he meant like the big picture, the Royal, a national guitar. Like, we were all playing this gigantic guitar together as a nation.
That reference was made for you.
Exactly. And I blew it. I missed it.
Would you say that you care, that you give extra emphasis or extra care to the vocal line that brings in the solo? Is that a thing?
Like the last vocal line right before the solo happens?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're sort of like
setting it up.
You got to set it up, because it's
I think that's cool. I like to do that live. Like it's kind of like that old school thing, like, has come back home again to get his laundry done. Look out now, go. You know how they used to do that?
Play
it. Or, I can play. Was that Stevie Wonder?
My favorite Gene Vincent was like, go Blue Caps, go. You gotta say the name of the band. Can you imagine like Robert Plant, go Led Zeppelin, go!
That's awesome.